CBS News 24/7 on this Tuesday. I'm Elizabeth Cook. We're keeping a close eye on three big stories happening right now from Washington to Vatican City. Any moment now, we could hear an update on the health of Pope Francis. The 88-year-old pontiff is still in critical condition, but yesterday he did conduct some official Vatican business from his hospital room. Now to Capitol Hill, where House lawmakers could vote as early as today on a budget proposal calling for trillions in spending and tax cuts. Speaker Mike Johnson is facing an uphill battle to push it through on a razor-thin margin. And a live look now at the podium back at the White House briefing room. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt is expected to give an update any moment now. We are watching out for what she will say on Doge cuts and directives from Elon Musk. Let's bring in CBS News White House reporter Aaron Navarro for more on all this. Aaron, thank you so much for being with us. CBS News obtained the letter from 21 anonymous employees that resigned from Doge. You read through that letter. What do we know now?
Liz, good to be with you. Yeah, these are workers who, yes, are part of what is now known as the Doge office, but they were there in that office before Doge was created. That office was originally the United States Digital Services Office, sort of the IT wing for the federal government. And these were workers that were essentially holdovers, a lot of them engineers, that in their letter, they said they were starting to be integrated into Doge's actions to cut down the federal government. They wrote that they, quote, will not lend their expertise to carry out or legitimize Doge's actions. Again, a lot of these are engineers, so the folks that would, on a technical level, be needed to make some of these cuts. And they also note that a third of the holdovers in this office were fired on February 14th after they were interviewed on January 21st, the day after Trump's inauguration.
And meanwhile, in the midst of all of this, Aaron, a lot of confusion involving emails from the Doge leader, Elon Musk, to federal workers. Can you walk us through the back and forth here? Do federal workers still face the threat of layoffs? What's the latest?
Yeah, the latest is a bit of confusion because it seemed to depend from agency to agency. They were giving conflicting messages and guidance to their employees on whether or not they have to respond. OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, which initially sent that "what did you do last week" email, said that responding to the email was voluntary, and then they also asked agency heads to review responses and non-responses, but gave no concrete guidance on what agencies should do with that. At the same time last night, Elon Musk posted on X, quote, that workers will be given a second chance and that failure to respond a second time will result in termination. So a lot of questions still out there, hoping to get some more clearance or guidance in that 1 p.m. Press briefing.
Yeah, we are standing by waiting for that press briefing from the White House. But another issue that could come up, Trump spoke at length during his press conference with French President Emmanuel Macron yesterday. We all saw that. So do we expect Leavitt to clarify any of those points during her briefing today?
Yeah, it seems like the conversation between Macron and Trump, as well as when President Macron was on Fox News last night, seems to be centered around Russia and Ukraine, the differing viewpoints on that UN resolution on whether to put blame, at least on paper, on Russia for this war. That's something Macron and Trump seem to disagree with. And what the conditions are for Russia in a ceasefire. Macron noted that they had a ceasefire with Russia in 2014, and they believe Russia did not honor that. So he is warning the U.S. to make sure that the conditions are right for Russia in a potential ceasefire this time around, hoping to get more clarity on that from Caroline later today.
All right, again, that press briefing expected to happen any moment now, and when it does, we'll bring you the highlights. Aaron Navarro, thank you so much for that insight. All right, playing out right now in Capitol Hill, two big stories dominating the headlines. First, a big push by Republican lawmakers to deliver what President Trump is calling one big, beautiful bill. The top Democrats in the House sounding off on that. Here's what they had to say.
Go USA!
Okay, those are federal workers impacted by the Doge layoffs and protesting, taking their concerns to the front doors of the lawmakers themselves. They've attempted to speak to several senators at this hour. So we're going to start there. CBS News congressional correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns joins us. Caitlin, great to see you. What can you tell us about these workers and the concerns that they're bringing straight to lawmakers' front doors?
That's right. This is something that we started to see in some town halls last week, and now you see constituents actually coming to the halls of Congress to try to tell them that some of these cuts have just gone too far in their view. However, I will say that the view of Republican leadership here on Capitol Hill is that the overall goal of shrinking the size of government is going to have some kind of collateral damage, but they do by and large agree with the idea of cutting government. And we heard from House Speaker Mike Johnson today saying that this has been a mandate, in his words, from the American people in voting for Donald Trump, saying he was going to do this sort of thing. And they say that, Congress hasn't been able to act and kind of get a control of shrinking the size of government the way that Musk has been able to do. Now, we'll see over the course of the next few weeks and months whether this reaches kind of a fever pitch and starts to really put pressure on lawmakers. We have seen some Republican lawmakers up here voice concerns about cuts in their own individual districts or in their states, cuts to national parks, for example, cuts to NIH funding. You will likely see this kind of tension between wanting to shrink the size of government, but also wanting to make sure that these don't hit too heavily in your state or district. So that's what we are seeing now, but the posture, at least from House Republican leadership, is that this is something that needs to be done, and the overall goal is something that they believe they had the votes for from the American people in November.
And Caitlin, the other big news on the Hill today, the big push from GOP lawmakers on passing President Trump's legislation. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries had this to say in the last hour. Let's take a listen to that.
Today we stand together as House Democrats with the American people to push back against this reckless Republican budget. This is a critical moment in the American journey. Everything we care about is under assault. The economy is under assault. The safety net is under assault. Our very way of life as a country is under assault. Democracy itself is under assault. Donald Trump, the administration, and House Republicans are hurting the American people. It's unacceptable, unconscionable, un-American, and we are not going to stand for it 1 minute.
Okay, so what's the status of this budget vote that House Speaker Mike Johnson says is going to happen today?
Well, right now, as it stands, he doesn't have the votes to pass it. He told us earlier today that a vote may happen tonight, it may not. So stay tuned, is what he said. Basically, they have a group of holdouts. Remember, the House majority is a majority by such a razor-thin margin. They really can only afford to lose one vote on this. And you have at least one person, Thomas Massie, saying that he's not voting for this under any conditions, and others who have voiced serious concerns. The biggest concerns are that it doesn't cut spending enough, and that it adds to the deficit, and that it also doesn't make permanent the Trump tax cuts. Now, you've also had a small group of moderate Republicans up here on Capitol Hill concerned about possible cuts to Medicaid. Now, in the actual text of this bill, this is a framework kind of setting up what will come through a different process. The framework itself, the bill itself, doesn't include specific cuts to Medicaid, but it does call for deep cuts in spending. And a lot of lawmakers up here on Capitol Hill have said that really the only way to achieve that number in terms of the cuts is to make changes to government programs, including Medicaid. So I asked Speaker Mike Johnson today, can you unequivocally say that there won't be any cuts to Medicaid? And he said that they want to focus on rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicaid to achieve some of that savings. So kind of laying the marker down here to, of course, be held accountable to later. But that kind of gives you a flavor of kind of how broad the coalition is in the House and how, delicate this majority really is. And why this all matters, of course, is because this is Congress's chance to exert itself, to say, hey, we still do things up here. We are passing the president's priorities legislatively. Yes, he can do a lot through executive orders, but we are the ones who fund those priorities. If they can't get the votes together, that raises a lot of questions about Congress's ability to really execute and whether, the president might take this and say he wants to go at more unilaterally.
Interesting. All right, CBS News congressional correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns. Caitlin, thank you so much for that. 3 American women found dead at a popular beach resort in Central America. We'll have the very latest on that investigation. You're watching CBS News 24/7. Police say 3 American women were found dead at a beach resort in Belize over the weekend. Officials also say they have not ruled out a possible drug overdose as a cause of death due to alcohol and gummies that were found at the scene. Housing staff members repeatedly trying to contact the 3 women over the weekend before using a master key to enter their room. The women were found motionless. We'll continue to monitor this story and bring you any updates as they come into our newsroom. Meanwhile, back here in the U.S., authorities in Southern California are looking for this woman, Yolanda Marodi. So she's a suspect in the murder of her wife, CAL FIRE Captain Rebecca Marodi. In the arrest warrant, authorities claim that Rebecca told Yolanda she was ending their marriage, and about 1 week later, Rebecca was found stabbed to death in her San Diego County home. Investigators believe Yolanda crossed the border into Mexico after the murder. They also say she has a violent history. Yolanda spent years in prison for killing her previous partner in the early 2000s. The Trump administration's efforts to reduce the size of the government continues to impact several agencies. The U.S. Forest Service seeing major cuts, more than 1,000 employees laid off, including biologists, trail builders, and mapping experts. The Trump administration walked back some of those changes. They restored at least 50 jobs in an effort to maintain and clean the parks and up the available seasonal positions from 5,000 to nearly 8,000. So let's go to Wyoming's Shoshone National Forest and CBS News correspondent Ian Lee. Ian, great to see you. There's still a massive amount of people, though, whose jobs were simply taken away. What impact will their firings have on the Forest Service's ability to do its job?
Hi, Liz. Let me give you a number. 160 million. That's roughly the number of people who visit the national forests around the country every year. And these people who were fired, these probationary employees, these are folks that, build trails, clean trails, they clean bathrooms, they maintain campgrounds. So these are the people that the general public deals with on a daily basis. In fact, the ranger station I'm standing in front of right now, their front door is shut. It's closed. That front desk isn't operating because the person who is manning it, they've been fired as well. So if you were to come into this town and want some basic information, you just couldn't get it. And so that's the kind of impact that it's going to have, especially on people this summer as they get out into the national forest. I've been speaking with a number of senior Forest Service officials across the country, and they're telling me the folks that were fired, these were the future of the Forest Service, and that it could take decades to repair the damage that was done.
And, you brought it up. Summer is right around the corner, so that means hot weather and the risk for wildfires. How is this going to impact fire season in terms of protecting our national forests?
Yeah, Liz, there's something about the Forest Service that is pretty unique. It's similar to the Marine Corps in a way, where in the Marine Corps, every Marine is a rifleman. Well, in the Forest Service, many of the people fight fires, even if it isn't their normal job, even if they're on a trail crew or a biologist. A lot of people get qualified to fight fires. And so when there is a massive fire season, it's an all hands on deck situation. I spoke with 3 people. They weren't fire people, but they were all qualified to fight fires. They said they've been fighting fires. They're ready to go fight fires. And so this could really have an impact on the fire season when you have people who are qualified to fight fires fired in this way.
Yeah, you mentioned that you got a chance to talk to some of the people who were fired. Can you tell us more about who they are and how are they handling their terminations? Are they already looking for new jobs?
You know, when you talk to these people, they're not in the Forest Service to make money. You don't get rich being in the Forest Service. These are people who are passionate about their jobs and their service to the public. And so it really destroyed their worlds. These were people who imagined retiring from the Forest Service in 30, 40 years' time. And so now they're looking for new jobs. Some of them, I talked to one lady, she was recently engaged. Another man just has an 8-month-old child. And so their lives were completely disrupted. And then you got to also look at communities, small communities like this and all over the country, where a lot of these federal jobs provide not only, jobs for those people, but a source of revenue for those communities. And so small communities across the country could also be heavily impacted by these firings.
Yeah, each one of these numbers that we talk about, Ian, these are people with families, these are people with mortgages, so it's making an impact, no question. All right, Ian Lee, thank you so much for that. All right, let's switch our focus now to Miami, where we could see a few showers today in South Florida, but you might already be waking up to flooding in your neighborhood if you live there after the extreme storms yesterday. Let's take a look from this video from Key West. This individual's yard and the street in front of his home all completely flooded. And just we know that Florida's no stranger to rain, right? It rains a lot there, but this was extreme.
This was a lot. I mean, Key West High School got 7 inches of rain from this storm system alone. And as we take a look at the map real fast, I'll pull it up below me, you'll see that storm system slowly but surely starting to move its way offshore as we head into the afternoon hours today, just near Florida. Now, they still could see some lingering showers into the afternoon hours, but that should start clearing up right around the corner as we advance into the evening hours tonight, early morning hours tomorrow. Now, that storm system is the first one I'm going to talk about. I want to head over to the Pacific Northwest because we did deal with that atmospheric river sweeping in areas like Oregon, Washington, all the way off into Idaho now, and all the way over into Montana with heavy snow in the forecast. As we head into the next 48 hours, we'll watch that system dissipate too, but let's head back to Florida. We talked about Key West and Key West High School hitting over 7 inches of rain just within a 24-hour period from that storm system. Palm Beach County got close to around 5 inches there. And as we take a look at the next big weather story for our friends down south and all the way up into the mid-Atlantic and the Midwest, we all have one thing in common, a big warm-up. Think about this. It was just last week, on this day alone, that we were dealing with temperatures close to around 44 degrees below zero in states like Nebraska dealt with chilly conditions too, but that number came from North Dakota. Today, North Dakota sits 17 degrees above average, so such a contrast. Just within 7 days alone, we dealt with sub-freezing temperatures. Now we're talking about daytime highs well above average, and it is a nice break if you really think about it from the thunderstorms and the severe weather that we experienced last week, but it is just from one polar extreme to the next. Now it's very warm in those states as we're gearing up for a little bit of a warm-up stretch into the rest of this week.
Yeah, it's hard not to get whiplash. It's like, what do I wear today? Do I wear my big puffy coat or is it shorts?
The tank
weather?
tops, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Bizarre.
Yeah.
All right, Jess, thanks so much.
Course.
All right, coming up, your favorite drink could be off the menu at Starbucks. Why the coffee chain is trimming their menu and their workforce. You're watching CBS News 24/7. Welcome back to CBS News 24/7. Today, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is now at the Guantanamo Bay Naval Base for the first time since his confirmation. Officials will brief him on all mission operations, including the ongoing effort to transfer migrants there. But his visit to the island comes as the Trump administration reportedly paused detainee tent construction over concerns that the facilities lack air conditioning or electricity. All right, let's turn our focus now to Oklahoma, where the Supreme Court ordered a new trial for this man, Richard Glossip. The justices threw out Glossip's murder conviction and death penalty after agreeing that he did not get a fair trial. Glossip was convicted of killing his former boss back in 1997. The Oklahoma man maintained his innocence even after 9 postponed execution dates. In other news, Bitcoin just dropped to its lowest price in 3 months. And at the same time, economists say they see signs of a sea change for the crypto industry. The investment platform Robinhood says the Securities and Exchange Commission will drop its investigation into the company's crypto arm. That news comes 3 days after a similar announcement from Coinbase, saying the SEC also agreed to drop its case against it. So let's bring in CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady. Kelly, what's going on with crypto?
Well, I think we are seeing the effects of a pro-crypto administration. Remember, President Trump, a lot of members that were elected to Congress, they promised to be pro-crypto. And this comes after many folks that I have talked to in the crypto industry looked at the Biden administration as very, very chilling towards the industry. Let's also remember that the crypto industry as a whole was one of the biggest donors to the 2024 election cycle to achieve things like this, a softening towards the industry. So you mentioned we had the SEC drop a suit against Coinbase last week, Robinhood this week. The heart of those suits was whether these companies were violating securities law. And I think what you're going to see is the SEC start to build the parameters around, are cryptocurrencies a security? Are they a commodity? Just providing a lot of clarity that hopefully in the future won't lead to, or there won't be a need for these lawsuits, because it will be very clear if or if not these companies are violating them. So definitely we're seeing a big change in crypto right now, Liz.
Kelly, I want to switch gears. President Trump pushing to revive the Keystone XL oil pipeline project that was shut down by the Biden administration. Now, if you remember, the project, first proposed back in 2008, planned to carry oil from Canada's western tar sands to U.S. refiners connecting Hardisty, Canada, with Steel City, Nebraska. In a social media post, Trump said in part, quote, "We want the Keystone XL pipeline built." And Trump says he wants it now. So, Kelly, what's the sell here from the president? And if this project does make a comeback, how is it going to impact everyday Americans?
Okay, so sort of three things of what's the sell from the president. The first is it could potentially lower prices. So think about it. If you have more oil coming from Canada and there is more oil in supply and you have either the same demand or less, that would lower prices. We already get a lot of our oil from Canada, and this would essentially allow more barrels per day, a significant more, to make its way to U.S. refineries. The second is less reliance on Middle Eastern countries for oil. If we're getting more of our oil from Canada, you get less from countries like Saudi Arabia and some of the other OPEC nations, as they are called. That would be both a security benefit, but also an environmental benefit. There are less restrictions in terms of how the oil is drilled, produced over there, than there are in Canada or the U.S. And finally, American jobs. So this would require more people to build this pipeline, get it going. So that's the sell from the president. I think what's really interesting is this is happening at the same time that we are also, as a nation, threatening energy tariffs on Canada. So if you have more oil and gas coming from Canada, but you also have a 10% tariff, it will be interesting to see how those two pieces interact.
Yeah, it could complicate things. And I want to ask you, Kelly, about Apple. The company's diversity, equity, and inclusion program looks like it's here to stay. What can you tell us about this?
So there was a shareholder vote today at their annual meeting. A particular shareholder put a proposal on the table that is very common for these meetings to address, that they wanted Apple to follow the lead of some of the other major retailers and tech companies to roll back their DEI policies. Apple shareholders voted against that. They will stay in place. And in fact, CEO Tim Cook said this: "We've never had quotas or targets for Apple. Our strength has always come from hiring the very best people and then providing a culture of collaboration." So as of now, that is there to stay, and shareholders made their voices heard, Liz.
All right, Kelly, thanks so much. Well, coming up, the Trump administration's latest round of cuts taking aim at election security. Nicole Skanga joins us next with the impact. Plus, the White House press secretary making comments about Elon Musk just moments ago. We'll bring that to you. You're watching CBS News 24/7. All right, welcome in. We want to turn back to the White House now, where just moments ago, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt answered questions on Doge and the emails sent to federal workers from Elon Musk. Take a listen to some of her clarification.
So a couple of things on this. First of all, let's just take a step back and talk about this idea. The president sent out a truth last weekend to Elon Musk saying he loves everything Elon is doing and he wants him to be even more aggressive because Doge thus far has proven incredibly successful in making our government more efficient. And so Elon and Doge came up with this idea. Elon has implemented this at his private companies. It has proven successful. And it's a very simple idea when you think about it. All the Office of Personnel Management is asking, all this administration is asking, President Trump is asking, is for federal workers who live off of the American taxpayer's dime to send 5 bullet points of what they have done in the previous week. That is all we are asking for. And so the Office of Personnel and Management sent out additional guidance last night. Those responses should be directed to agency leadership, and the president defers to his cabinet secretaries, who he's obviously entrusted to pursue the guidance relative to their specific workforce. And for some of the agencies that you've seen who have said, please don't send these emails, it's in their best interest for that specific agency, and the president supports that. And let me be very clear, the president and Elon, his entire cabinet are working as one unified team, and they are implementing these very common sense solutions.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt there at the White House just moments ago, doubling down on the president's and Elon Musk and Doge's request to federal workers to respond to an email detailing 5 things that they accomplished last week. She says the president is in favor of Elon Musk doing this and wants to lean even more into that proposal. We're going to stay on top of this and bring you more updates from this press conference as they come in. All right, I want to take you now to an extraordinary moment for the United Nations. The U.S. sided with Russia and opposed an effort to condemn Russian President Vladimir Putin for his invasion of Ukraine. Now, this was after President Trump met with French President Emmanuel Macron at the White House, expressing optimism that a deal to end the war could be just weeks away. CBS News foreign correspondent Imtiaz Tayeb reports from Kyiv.
Well, after a day of stunning developments at the White House, at the UN, and here in the capital, Kyiv, on the 3-year anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, that war is still very much ongoing. Overnight, Russia launched 7 missiles and over 200 drones at Ukraine. This is the 3rd night in a row we've seen such large attacks on this country. And it really just underscores the fact that despite the diplomacy and the tension that we've seen between both President Trump and President Zelensky, and indeed with Europe as a whole, that this is a conflict that not only is ongoing, but is affecting the lives of Ukrainians almost every day. And again, we've been speaking to Ukrainians about how they're feeling in this moment, what they're thinking about the future, and many of them are afraid that they will have to give up some of their territory to Vladimir Putin in order to end this war, begging the question, after all of this fighting, all of this loss and all of this suffering, to then have to lose part of their territory because they've lost support of President Trump, or at least appear to have lost the support of President Trump. What has all this fighting been for? Still, Ukrainians we've been speaking to say that they will continue to fight, they will continue to defend their country, because for them, that is what this has all been about. Back to you.
Imtiaz Tayeb reporting from Ukraine for us. Thank you so much. Now to our Eye on America. CBS News in your communities, hearing your stories. So what does a struggling store do when it wants to attract new customers? Well, oftentimes it puts on a sale, right? Well, what does a struggling city do when it wants to attract new residents? Well, in the city, if the city is Cumberland, Maryland, it offers a bonus with a string attached. Here's CBS's Nancy Chen with more.
At the edge of Appalachia in the Allegheny Mountains, the regulars almost always leave Caporelli's Bakery with their hands full. Just like they've done for the last 118 years in the city of Cumberland.
That is my grandfather right from the old store, and that's my dad, Gus.
While Dave Caporelli is the 4th generation to man the counter, his dad, Gus, still pitches in the back. But over time, the city around their bakery has changed. Once Maryland's 2nd largest community, Cumberland was known as the Queen City. Its crown lost its luster, though, as the area's 3 biggest factories all closed within 5 years.
What was it like seeing the city change?
It's like a real busy town. And
Then they started downsizing, one leave, another leave, and we really got hit by it big time.
Can I talk to you just a second?
CBS News was here in 1978 when the tire factory began laying off employees.
Are you going to be affected by the layoffs at all?
No, I don't think so.
Well, it's only going to be a small group.
Unfortunately, they were wrong. Soon, the entire plant shuttered.
As companies left town, people did as well. In 1940, the population was nearly 40,000. Today, it's been halved to less than 20. But the city is now hoping to turn a page.
Cumberland has always...
Last year, Mayor Ray Morris announced an attention-grabbing offer, up to $20,000 each for 10 people willing to move here.
We were looking for people that were bringing their jobs with them. We were looking for remote workers.
$20,000 is a lot of money to offer up.
That's an amount that could make people's eyes open a little bit.
Cumberland is one of more than 70 places that have paid people to uproot and move in over the past 5 years.
Is it radical to pay people to move to a city?
If you're a government and you want to bring people to your area, well, before remote work, you had to recruit businesses that were expanding. It could be difficult.
University of Maryland professor Evan Starr studies payment programs like these.
Now, with remote work, what you can do is try to attract workers directly.
He points to a successful pioneer, Tulsa Remote, which has enticed more than 3,000 participants with grants of $10,000 each. The investment has paid off, raising an additional $11 million in new tax revenue.
They can use that money to spend on schools and other local amenities. They can make a big difference in the area.
Dave Caparelli is looking for a similar boost in Cumberland.
That was probably in the early 50s. It was just a different time, you know.
Seems like it was pretty bustling then.
It was, yeah. And we'll get back to that.
Yeah.
Hope to.
But if hope alone won't get it done, the thinking here, throw in some dough as well. Nancy Chen in Cumberland, Maryland.
All right, we are following breaking news out of Rome, where we are getting an update on the health of Pope Francis. At last word, the 88-year-old pontiff remains critical but stable 11 days after being hospitalized for pneumonia in both lungs. CBS News senior foreign correspondent Seth Doane joins us live from Rome. Seth, thank you for being with us. What's the latest on Pope Francis?
Well, as you mentioned, Liz, critical, but is in critical condition, but stable. A few more details. No acute respiratory crisis. We had heard over the weekend, of course, he had had that prolonged respiratory crisis. That was something that he has not had since the weekend. His blood parameters are stable. In the evening, he had a scheduled CAT scan to look at the issues in his lungs. Of course, he has pneumonia in both lungs, so he had a CAT scan to take a look at that. No results of that were released by the Vatican tonight, but he did have that CAT scan. One noteworthy thing, they say he's still not being given a prognosis by his doctors, and that's interesting. That he's in critical condition, and his doctors have told us from Friday right along they are not willing to say or not able to say things could go either way. He could get better or worse, but I would say this is a relatively, at least not discouraging update. Sometimes we get much more grim updates that we start hearing about new things. I was asking Dr. John LaPook what he would be listening for, and one of the things he said was for new things to pop up, for us to start hearing like what we heard on Sunday night of concerns of early kidney failure, things like that. So nothing that stands out in this, but not saying he's in the clear for sure. Liz?
Sure. Another kind of, it sounds like, encouraging element to this, Seth, is despite his condition, Pope Francis was still able to perform some of his official Vatican duties from the hospital. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, we know that he met with Cardinal Parolin, the number 2, the Secretary of State, and his deputy. We know he started the process towards sainthood for 5 different candidates. The Catholic Church has been sending out messages saying the Pope is working. Every day we get these bulletins that describe when different people are nominated to different posts, an archbishop here or there, and they've continued to send those out, really saying all along, and in fact in tonight's report also mentioning that the Pope had resumed his work activities. There is an effort to show for obviously the health of the Pope, but also the health of the Church, that the Pope is still working and that the affairs of the Church move forward.
All right, CBS News senior foreign correspondent Seth Doane, live for us from Rome. Thank you so much, Seth. Well, still ahead, concerns that cuts from Elon Musk's Doge could have an impact on election security. We'll have more on that. You're watching CBS News 24/7. New concerns this morning after cuts to the federal workforce tasked with ensuring election security. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency works to prevent foreign interference in our elections. Doge fired 130 probationary employees with the agency. That's roughly 4% of the 3,400-person workforce. And the move has brought criticism from a number of state governments and election officials who are concerned with the future of election security. So let's bring in CBS News Homeland Security correspondent Nicole Skanga. She joins us live. Nicole, can you walk us through how and why the U.S. is deprioritizing efforts to stop foreign meddling in our elections?
Yeah, absolutely, Liz. I mean, this purge of folks who work in the U.S. government's democracy business has actually been quietly happening behind the scenes for weeks. On top of those probationary firings, first came this flurry of notices forcing out more than a dozen personnel. These are workers from the nation's cyber defense agency. You mentioned it there, CISA. These are the ones identifying and stopping foreign interference in U.S. elections. And then earlier this month, on her first day in office, the Attorney General Pam Bondi disbanded the FBI's task force targeting foreign influence operations. These teams have rooted out covert operations from Russia, China, and Iran in the last year alone, according to U.S. officials. CISA has also defunded its nationwide program of training state and local government officials, offering threat monitoring services. It's a center known as the Elections Infrastructure Information Sharing and Analysis Center, long name, important job. While state and local governments run elections nationwide, we know that, federal agencies like the FBI and CISA really coordinate with election offices to help safeguard against rising cyber and physical threats, while also uncovering those pesky foreign influence campaigns that are designed to sow division among Americans and really uproot voter confidence.
And Nicole, you've reported that election officials and lawmakers, by the way, across the country are really concerned with these actions. What are they telling you about the consequences here?
Yeah, top Democrats on the Senate and House committees overseeing election legislation expressed grave concern over the changes, and I've spoken to a handful of secretaries of state who reminded me the reason so many of these teams exist in the first place is namely in 2016, Russia tried to tamper with U.S. elections, targeting 21 states. That set into motion that January 2017 designation of elections as critical infrastructure. And we've seen threats since. I mean, we're only months removed from CISA and the FBI aiding states in responding to Election Day bomb threats, white powder mailings to election officials nationwide. In the run-up to that 2024 election, officials debunked phony Russian-linked videos that purported to depict election workers destroying ballots during nationwide voting. A lot of viewers might remember that. And an FBI investigation outed a hack and leak operation that stole documents from the Trump campaign, leading to the indictment of 3 Iranian cyber operatives. So U.S. officials, election workers, and experts tell me CISA and FBI possess this sort of bird's eye view of the threat landscape that election officials find to be helpful in sizing up the threats that are facing them and in being able to respond to them in real time.
And Nicole, it's worth noting, though, the nation's top cyber defense agency is launching its own investigation into efforts to fight election interference. What do we know about that investigation?
Yeah, this kind of went under the radar, Liz, but the director of CISA has launched an investigation into every program and official that touches election security, plus mis, dis, and malinformation. She told her workforce in a message that it's, quote, necessary to rescope the agency's election security activities to ensure CISA is focused exclusively on executing its cyber and physical security mission, echoing the DHS Secretary Kristi Noem's assertion during her confirmation hearing that the agency had strayed far off its mission. Now, this audit will result in a report. CISA says it's due out on March 6th. We have asked the Department of Homeland Security if they have plans to make that report public, and we are waiting to hear back. Liz?
All right, we'll be waiting and watching. Nicole Skanga, thanks so much. All right, let's take you to a story about a cat who doesn't just have 9 lives. She is a walking miracle. A Colorado Springs family thought they would never see their beloved cat, Sunny Lou, again after she disappeared during a cross-country move late last year. But when their storage unit arrived in Colorado after a 3-week delay, they found more than just their furniture inside.
They brought in our hide-a-bed sofa and started to unwrap it.
I heard him meow. I ran to the garage. Randy was, come in, you gotta check the couch. And so I think it might be our kitty.
What? This is crazy. This has been 3 weeks. I rushed in there, pulled out the hide-a-bed, and I could see that there was a small little hole into the armrest where, the sound was kind of coming from.
Oh, praise God.
Oh, she's alive. She made it. Amazing. Well, the hide-a-bed was hiding a cat. Sunny Lou had gotten stuck inside the hole and then trapped in the couch without any food or water for 3 weeks. Amazing. She was weak and emaciated, but she was alive. And the explanation for that is still a mystery.
Medically, I don't know. I don't have an answer as far as how this cat survived that ordeal. It's really remarkable. I think we don't always get an explanation with cases like this, but I agree with the family. I think she is a miracle cat.
We feel that she fought, to stay alive for us.
We're so glad to have her back in our life, and she's just living her best 9th life.
No kidding, no food or water for 3 weeks. That's amazing. The Hansons think Sunny Lou crawled into the couch to hide from the movers, but then accidentally got packed up. Their vet says Sunny Lou's health has fully recovered from her 3 weeks in storage. So good to hear. All right, let's take you now to Chicago Midway Airport. A live look there where we just heard about a close call on the runway. We're going to stay on top of this developing story. Stay with us right here at CBS News 24/7.